to you, Nikhil. We can start the session. And before that, if there are any questions, you can type them off in the questions box and we can take it up at the end of the session.
All right. Thanks, Rehan. I hope you can hear me all right.
Yes, Nikhil. I think everybody can.
Awesome. So the agenda for today's webinar is we will start with understanding the manufacturing challenges where planning and scheduling can help. We will also look at identifying cost reduction opportunities using planning and scheduling. We'll then move to importance of dynamic planning and scheduling to achieve cost optimization during this unprecedented time. We'll look at how to understand return on investment for enterprise solutions and areas related to planning and scheduling. We'll also look at how to justify these investments in planning and scheduling systems, followed by two practical use cases of companies that are actually doing this right now, who are our customers, and how they are utilizing scheduling in this time is what I will take you forward, and then we will open the session for Q&A as well as some next steps. So before I begin, I hope everybody in your respective places with your families are safe and healthy, and we wish that it remains so. And just to basically do some glossary or what we see in the manufacturing sector, whether it is chemicals, pharma, batch manufacturing, or whether it is discrete manufacturing like automotive industry, industrial machinery, heavy equipment manufacturers, precision component, aerospace manufacturers. No matter what manufacturing or what type of manufacturing you do, production planning and scheduling, depending on what industry you are, the maturity levels, and what kind of production you do, whether you do make to stock, make to order, engineer to order. There are multiple words that are being used in the industry. So it's master scheduler, production scheduler, planner, MPS, MRP, FCS, rough cut capacity planning, be all it may. To bring all of this basically under one umbrella, many years ago, Gartner basically and many other research bodies around the world coined the word as advanced planning and scheduling, or necessarily known as APS. I just wanted to give a clarification. It's essentially the same thing. So in order to avoid confusion, it's just that the reason why planning and scheduling or production planning and control today is called advanced planning or advanced scheduling or advanced planning and scheduling is just because there are softwares associated with it, and any software associated to advanced planning and scheduling is better understood with the term APS. So we're not going to be doing a software demo or etc. Today. The focus is basically to focus on some of the problems as well as to give all of you an understanding whether does APS really apply to your situation, and if it does, how do you basically go about evaluating it, justifying it internally, and take organized and structured decisions in terms of whether you need such solutions or not for your situations. So let's go and start with some of the manufacturing scale challenges where scheduling can help. I believe that we have an audience where we have participants right now from operations, we have participants from sales, we have or from purchases, but everybody is in some cross-functional domain of manufacturing that are attending here. So to look at some of the challenges, the first thing that comes basically in the current times is capital expenditure and capacity utilization. We are seeing unprecedentedly a situation right now that either most of the capital investments are being put on hold, as well as the focus is being more on how do we utilize our existing capacities to do more. And if you see at an operational level, we only have finite equipment, or we only have so much labor. We only have so many equipments that can do a particular type of products. But we also have the necessary operational constraints, whether it's downtime, whether it is breakdowns, whether it is changeovers, cleaning, and setup kind of activities that you do, and all these have an impact on capacity utilization. The focus, and one of the challenges that is happening currently, is that if scheduling was not a problem a few years back, and the reason was that capacity challenges were mostly addressed primarily by capital expenditure, and they were not necessarily addressed with the mindset to say, hey, let's do more with what we already have got, and then look for capital expenditures. And this is one of the challenge where in the current times, we no more have the luxury to do capital expenditure, and the focus is on doing more with everything that we have today. The other challenge is working capital, and this has a direct relation to work in progress inventory, or in some industries, even shelf life. So shelf life is a concept, particularly in pharmaceuticals or chemicals, where you can't keep any, let's say, active pharma ingredients or any chemicals that have undergone reaction for more than, let's say, 4 hours. They have to get completed in stipulated time, and thereby basically shelf life becomes a concern. Another easy example of shelf life would be food companies. Like, imagine if I am making a yogurt or something, I can't just leave it for months and months. They are perishable goods, and there is an impact of shelf life. What is happening and what we are hearing from many of our customers is that, especially the customers who have primarily had make to stock, or they would be 50% make to stock, 50% make to order hybrid models. Inventory is becoming a challenge at different levels. For some, it is finished goods inventory. For many, basically, it is work in progress inventory, just because of the way they would have organized their manufacturing processes. And for many, it's also basically the raw material inventory, which may be a challenge for consumption. So this is another challenge where scheduling has a direct impact, or planning and scheduling has a direct impact. The third area is the cost of goods sold. Anybody here familiar with finance? On our income statement or profit and loss statements, we have revenue, but then we buy materials from our vendors, and everything that we buy from outside goes into the category of cost of goods sold. But one of the reasons we have particularly heard from finance managers or from purchase people in manufacturing organizations is that this cost of goods sold also basically has some overheads, and that overheads basically come due to material availability. And the simple example is that you have planned a month's production in your manufacturing facility, or a week's production, or a day's production, and that is what you want to go ahead and manufacture and produce. But a few hours before, or maybe sometimes if you're firefighting towards the last minute, you understand that your stores or your warehouse is not really able to supply that material, and now you need to run around, firefight, and say, hey, what can we make as immediate changes so that we can go ahead and produce something else. Now, people on the production are trying to produce something else without knowing whether is that really required, because their metrics are about capacity utilization, and capacity utilization. And purchase people would be struggling now with a new problem that that material has only been delayed. So it is anyways going to come and sit in my warehouse or my stores, but I'm not going to know when I will be able to utilize it. And at the same time, they have an added problem of going and ordering now a new set of materials that would be needed based on the dynamic changes that production would be doing on their schedule. So in this manner, planning and scheduling has a definite impact on what you're going to purchase and how you use basically already the purchase items that are sitting in your stores and warehouse. And the reason why I put this picture, right, like if it is a very small item by size, many times it can be managed, like, the cost of inventory carrying cost may not be high, but just think, if you were dealing with large helicopters or turbines or equipment that is just huge, and its components basically are so many in number, the problem just amplifies further and further, and the cost of goods sold and the overheads related to that just dynamically have a significant impact because of material availability. Then let's come to another challenge that we are seeing is revenue. How do I do more revenue? And this is typically dependent on my bottleneck resources. If I can keep my bottleneck resources up and running to the max, and that is going to give me basically better throughput, but that also has a direct impact on my on-time delivery. So whether it is new opportunity business from a customer, or whether it is just delivering to the customer on the commitments that you are making, and if finance or sales people are taking monthly revenue targets, if you see a delta that you assume that you will make X revenue, but you ended up doing X minus delta X, then revenue has a direct impact. And on-time delivery and throughput both have a huge dependency on how you plan and schedule all your resources in your plant. It's not only the equipment, it's your people, it's the other constraints, it's materials, everything basically plays a role when we are looking at resources on the shop floor. Then comes cost of poor quality, and the cost of poor quality is directly linked to operational constraints. And when I talk about operational constraints, if we take example of food manufacturing, with the current situation, not only basically safety of people is a concern, but what is going into the food, have we really followed processes? An example of food manufacturing could be that you have allergens, koshers, people have peanut allergies, people have allergies maybe, because of gluten or eggs. So the manufacturing processes really need to take care of these constraints when they are producing their items. If I talk about pharmaceuticals, you can't have basically the wrong ingredients going into the tablets, and there are safety and strict process norms on the shop floor that need to be adhered, and they sort of bring in basically operational constraints. And if these operational constraints are not adhered to, what it leads to is it leads to rework and rejections in our manufacturing process, and that has a direct impact on cost of poor quality. To just give an additional example of cost of poor quality in discrete manufacturing, whether it is aerospace, whether it is automotive, we would basically have technical constraints of using, let's say, different kinds of dyes, different kinds of molds, and these would necessarily not be available in abundance. Many times, if they're very costly items, they can act as constraints. You can have tooling constraints, and all these constraints, if they're not adhered to, and if I just go ahead, do some mix and match, that could again have significant impact on quality. All right. Uh, let's come to another challenge, which is time to market, collaboration, skills. And if you see, because of the current crisis, we are seeing a new challenge added to manufacturing, where if you are a company which is trying to do some limited production, or if you're a company, because of the current situation, are having a spike in demand. Let's say if you're manufacturing sanitizers, almost everybody needs sanitizers today, and the demand has just spiked. But if you're not able to have people come to the factories, then absenteeism is becoming a very big challenge. So taking the availability of staff with the required skill levels is a problem basically inside planning and scheduling. In order to understand, can I meet my existing lead times? Can I collaborate better? Do I have the necessary skills? So these are the various manufacturing challenges, which are related. But if I holistically have to summarize, all these challenges have a direct impact either on the productivity of the manufacturing operations and supply chain. It basically either has an impact on the lead time or specific cycle times. It has impact on inventory, and it has impact on delivery. And if you see the circle and the value drivers, think of scheduling and planning as the spinal cord or the nervous system of our human body, where it uh, it impacts. Like if I have a pain in my back, there's a very good chance that because of that my leg can pain, and it may not be seen, but still there is pain, and the spine may not know that the leg is paining, and the leg may not know that it's because of the spine. And that's what we mean by value drivers. Planning and scheduling is sort of the nervous system of manufacturing operations, where it has impact on all the areas and different cross functions that we have in our manufacturing. So with this, let us understand that how could advanced planning and scheduling help in identifying cost reduction opportunities. And to give some premise here is that we are right now in unprecedented times, and the focus is not on scaling and opening up 20 different factories or globally being available in different countries, but the focus is right now moving towards rethinking business models, strategies, or surviving itself. And in all these activities, we are seeing that most of our customers, and I'm sure all of you would agree, that the focus is to right now look at where are my opportunities in terms of my existing design, in terms of my existing process, in terms of cost reduction. So let's look at some of the examples in terms of how advanced planning and scheduling could help in identifying opportunities for cost reduction. No software can automatically do cost reduction for you, but it is a decision support system where it will identify the opportunities, and once you change your processes, it will give you the necessary results. So let's start with reducing work in progress inventory. Many make to stock or hybrid manufacturing companies who are partially make to stock, make to order, they work with some sort of assumptions in terms of safety stock, in terms of minimum target quantities. So if an order comes from a customer that, hey, I need 1,000 units of a finished good item from your company, and let's call it basically an SKU, given that we have people from multiple industries here. So if I have to basically put 100 units of SKU 001, but if my safety stock is always 500 and my minimum target quantities are always 250 or 400, where I have lot sizes in multiples of 250 or multiples of 400, even if I have a demand of 100, I'm still going to go ahead and produce. With the demand currently becoming uncertain, one of the challenge basically is happening is that we have our production planning teams doing master production scheduling. So they take demand, they would do some forecasting, but they would say that, how do we come up with what the manufacturing needs to produce based on certain rules and assumptions, and or let's call them as inventory parameters. Now, these inventory parameters, because of what is happening in the market today, is that demand is very uncertain. And the traditional process has been to set these parameters and relook at them once in a year, once in a few months, and sometimes not even look at them. But the fact is that, can we dynamically look at those parameters, change them, and make sure that we are not going and just unnecessarily creating work in progress inventory, or we're just not going unnecessarily manufacturing what we may not need. The other area is avoiding unnecessary production. So if you are a company which always basically has some sort of stock in multiple warehouses, then chances are that before you tell your production what has to be manufactured, you are trying to come up with a net aggregate demand. But to come up with a net aggregate demand, a simple way to do it is just negate the stocks. But what happens is that as you start looking at capacities, if you're using spreadsheets, or if you're just using uh, uh, infinite algorithms, then you would see something as your graphs looking as what you can see on the left side. So think of the yellow is like, your capacity limits, and you can see that based on the demand that you have, you would have, and think of these different colors as your multiple SKUs, and you will see that demand is going out of capacity, on a couple of days. And based on this, you're giving this as a plan, and you're saying that this is what my demand is. Let me go ahead and give this, and whatever I can produce, I will produce. Whatever I cannot, I will push it the next month. And this is a typical cycle of creating what we call as backlog production. But that also many times leads to unnecessary production, because once you put this to the backlog, because you're working based on forecast, because you're working based on assumptions, what is necessarily needed today from your sales teams may not be necessarily needed a month down the line, and the situation would have changed. So using finite mathematics, you can actually predict what you really can produce this month, and you should only basically produce what it can be and what is needed, and that in turn can avoid unnecessary production. And this is where planning and scheduling can be very helpful. The other area of opportunity to identify an opportunity is that we are seeing many manufacturing scale down production. So if you were working basically 3 shifts, 2 shifts, if you had multiple workforce, the challenge today is that with so much demand uncertainty, I can't work with averages. Earlier I could do that. I could say, yeah, I am having about 3 shifts of production, but I think the production for the next 6 months is just going to be so low that I'll just work with 1 shift. But I'm still taking a very holistic decision that if I need 100 people for first shift, and 200 people when it is 2 shifts, I'll say just at a high level, let me just work with 100 people. Let me work with certain equipments. If you see the screen, when you basically use advanced planning and scheduling softwares, map out actually the dependencies, okay, map out basically the exact equipments, okay, you can identify basically opportunities for cost reduction in terms of shifts. Whether do I really need to, which equipments do I need to basically go and work on 2 shifts? Are there basically areas where I just need to work for a few hours? And accordingly, basically, you can go ahead and design your shift planning, your people planning, and your materials planning. One of the challenges we've also seen from maintenance teams is that When production was in full-fledged, they're always looking for opportunities to fit their maintenance schedules. And that problem even still remains today, that how do we accurately plan maintenance? And when you have demand uncertainty, if you can schedule your and sequence your orders and your demand accurately, you could see in this picture, I could identify opportunities for plant maintenance. I can say that if I look at this component assembly machine here, I can see that there's a gap here, and this gap between this pink and green order, hey, can I basically complete my maintenance here? Because seems like there's just no production that is being organized on that particular day. So these are the various opportunities. If you can identify accurately, they can reduce overhead significantly. Improving asset utilization, because we're not going to get more equipment, is becoming more and more important. So how can we do more with what we have? So looking at equipment availability, labor availability, tooling constraints, in some regions where power is being still a constraint, even those can be modeled as constraints, to then identify opportunities to say, how much exact labor do we need? Is my assets, like if you have, let's say, 5 machines to do the same operation, or if you have 5 equipments basically which are doing the exact same thing, to take and understand that, from a delivery point of view, do I need to really run two machines or 2 equipments? Can I just choose to run one and just totally stop the other 4? These decisions to increase asset utilization can very well, these opportunities can very well be identified with advanced planning and scheduling. Reducing working capital requirement. So the biggest area where our working capital is usually blocked is materials, and material availability and shelf life, as I spoke, is one of the areas. So the way planning and scheduling basically helps is that it allows you to constrain all your materials to your schedule, and then it tells you basically where the shortages are. And if you can see here, it also plots inventories to tell you, where you are having unutilized inventory, so that you can take the necessary decisions, that if you're not going to have demand basically for those products, for some time to come, then can we, can we do away with that inventory? Can we sell it and, free some of our working capital? These are the many decisions that related to materials that advanced planning and scheduling can very quickly help, which has a direct impact on cash flows. This particular requirement may not be for everybody right now, but it is certainly for all our warriors that are currently helping us in this time of unprecedented times due to COVID-19. We are seeing many of our customers who are manufacturing disinfectants or ventilators or PPEs, gloves, masks, etc. They've had such a spike in demand, and their struggle is not cost reduction, but their struggle is that, how do I optimize my capacity so that my monthly revenues can be more or equivalent to what I plan? And what they are looking at is that, hey, how can I look at optimizing my sequences on the floor? How can I do more with my capacity? And that math, in order to do that math, it's very complicated to do that math in using spreadsheets or using ERP systems. Even if you had a world-class spreadsheet expert who could write the algorithm, on the first day of the month, he could work, let's say, for 8-10 days, come up with a fantastic plan basically for the whole month. But 2 days, 3 days into the into production, if you have to dynamically take all the constraints that have now come up after 2 or 3 days and resequence and reoptimize, uh, most people basically say that I can do it once a month, but I cannot do it as close to real time. And this is one of the areas where planning and scheduling can dynamically optimize your sequences again and again, so that you can be as close to the monthly revenues that you're predicting by optimizing your throughput and capacity. Making accurate sales delivery commitments, whether you are not manufacturing, whether your demand has decreased, or whether you're having a surge in demand. This is one of the areas where we always are basically having a cross-functional collaboration issue. Sales always is trying to work with, let's say, average lead times, or with some sort of average and assumptions in order to commit to customers. Where advanced planning and scheduling can have an impact on sales delivery commitments is that rather than working on assumptions, you could actually schedule inquiries, and you could model capable to promise, or what we call a CTP or ATP, and you could bring those inquiries into your schedule boards, and you could say that, hey, when is my production going to be able to deliver this? And on top of that, if you accurately put some buffer that it has to go for inspection, for some quality, for some checks, for some packaging, for some shipment, all that is can be worked with lead times, because it's a large component. But you can't assume that your material is just going to be available in a standard 30 days, 90 days, and your production will also be done in standard 30 daes or 90 days. If you are producing in less than a 1 day, yeah, sure, production is not a very big problem. But if your lead times, or if your manufacturing lead times are in weeks or days, or in months, then just working with average or assumptions can have a big impact from a sales side on what you're going to produce, and you'll always be seeing poor on-time deliveries. So making accurate sales delivery commitments is where advanced planning and scheduling can really help. We have had a lot of customers who have their own capacities, but also subcontract, and essentially they're always making make versus buy decisions. So every time there is a need to do what ifs, that what is my capacity doing, what can I handle, and only what I cannot handle I will go ahead and give it to my subcontractors. This is where planning and scheduling in this time of crisis, where already demand is uncertain, so you may have a couple of months where you may say that yeah, I need to use these two subcontractors, but for the next 3 months, you may not need them. To make these decisions accurately, so that because make versus buy decisions have a direct impact on profitability, as well as your own asset utilization, is where planning and scheduling can help. Improving customer and delivery experience. So what happens is that we've typically seen that you would have committed a customer a date, and as you start producing, as you start ordering your materials, things change. Vendors will say, I was to give it to you yesterday, but 4 of my people didn't come. So now I'll give it to you after 2 days. So you have material delays, we have production delays, we have breakdowns. The limitations with using spreadsheets, or even basically our ERP systems, etc., is that we're not able to take dynamically these inputs from the shop floor and then understand the impact, like which orders are going to now, which customers are going to have their orders delayed, or what's going to basically happen if I reschedule and see, if I want to go back to my customer and tell that hey, I am going to be delayed in my production, but if you want to give them a commitment date, that the revised commitment dates, unless you have a tool that can dynamically reschedule, then it becomes a very big problem, and then you're again working with just assumptions and lead time. But essentially we have seen customers just firefighting, and this is one more cost reduction opportunity that planning and scheduling can help, because if you are going to have delays, as long as you don't have penalties, it doesn't matter. But if there are penalties in place, then this could very well be a cost reduction opportunity to ensure that you're not unnecessarily being charged penalties, or you're not unnecessarily sending it, if you're an export company, you're not unnecessarily sending things by air, whereas you could have used road transport or ships in order for exports. And finally, schedule attainment. In order for sales, purchase, production, all of them basically to work in collaboration. The way the disruption this crisis is bringing us is that it is very important to work with a single source of truth, but more importantly, it is very important that all these cross-functional areas are in sync with each other. They collaborate with each other. But then what is the metric with which we can measure that whether everybody is working in sync? Is there better collaboration or not? And that metric is schedule attainment, or also popularly known as schedule adherence. So if I planned basically for 1,000 units to be manufactured today, did I do 1,000 or did I just do 800? Whatever may be the reason. So schedule attainment is becoming a very important uh, parameter for production planning and scheduling teams. It's also becoming a metric for production planning and control teams, but it's also becoming an operations metric for the chief operating officer in terms of what is basically the schedule attainment. And finally, collaborative scheduling, right? We would, if you look at a steel company, there are multiple departments. If you look at a pharma company, there are multiple departments, and each of them, it's like mini factories within a large factory, and each of them have their own constraints. Each of them have their own challenges. How do you bring all these people together? And the fact that today that is not happening, that itself has a lot of cost and buffers basically built. A classic example is, let's say two departments are doing their own planning and sequencing and optimizing, and they're like mini factories within a large factory. They would have some sort of work in progress inventory built, or if you've implemented lean manufacturing or operational excellence, you would typically see kanbans, or you would see basically precise work in progress inventory slots that would be available in manufacturing. Do you need them? Can we avoid them? Can we do away with those? Is where collaborative scheduling can really help in synchronizing multiple departments with each other, so that we can look for opportunities either in the area of inventory or in terms of space utilization, so that we can schedule better also our equipment, and hence improve our capacity utilization. So with these cost identification opportunities, what is the importance of dynamics planning and scheduling systems and achieving cost optimization during this crisis? So what are we seeing? We are seeing some of the operational challenges. So the common challenge that we are seeing right now is the biggest thing that is impacting production teams or manufacturing teams is absenteeism. You have demand, you have some orders, but you don't have the amount of people that you usually would have. And we are classifying all of that into absenteeism. You want to do capacity optimization. That's the only way. As I said, that CapEx is on hold. So this is a common challenge that we're seeing across the manufacturing sector. Then, to summarize, we are seeing a scenario where there is an increase in demand in production because of the existing factors. And there, the challenge is on-time delivery, and the other challenge is collaboration. There's just so much pressure right now that any opportunity to make collaboration just improves the speed with which you communicate, you do your work, and do your delivery. And then there are manufacturing companies where we have poor demand right now, and the poor demand either may be temporary. For example, automotive industry, the next one or two quarters may be a poor demand, but when things get back to normal, you would see a spike in demand. But if you take the oil and gas industry, while oil and gas repair manufacturing may just be going bonkers as increasing in demand. But anybody who is manufacturing oil, etc., the oil prices that are currently with whatever is happening to them, you would see that demand will basically drastically reduce. So for companies where demand is drastically reducing or it's uncertain, the challenge is basically cost reduction, and the other big challenge is inventory. So with this summary, if I have to tell you that these are the opportunities, and in all these scenarios, advanced planning and scheduling is really adding value. Most of the participants who've been invited today have had some background or some understanding or some exposure to advanced planning and scheduling, and we wanted to go one step further to add some value in terms of how these investments can be justified. So to justify investment in planning and scheduling, if you're not measuring schedule attainment, just go ahead and start measuring. Look at a plan, whether it is for 4 hours, for 1 day, for 1 month. Okay, just look at the plan and then see actually what you're doing. If you're looking at numbers where your schedule attainment is 30%, 40%, 50%, or even 60 to 70%, that is an opportunity for justifying investment in APS. Measure your backlogs. If you plan that you want to do X million dollars of revenue in a month, and out of that, a lot of revenue is basically going into backlog for the next month, that's an opportunity for advanced planning and scheduling. If you're a company which is having a lot of production variants, where you are having to do a lot of number of changeovers, a lot of time on setup. For example, aerospace has first article inspections, or so many product variants where you need to change the toolings, the fixtures, and that results in a lot of changeover times. If you talk about pharmaceuticals or chemicals, let's say if there is a color that is changing in the product, or just cleaning that has to be done after every different batch runs, you will see that a lot of the changeovers that keep the equipment idle would be a big factor in terms of capacity utilization. You can measure the loss of capacity utilization due to material unavailability. We have many companies who have gone ahead and used the philosophy that because I have long lead times in my materials, I'm going to just go ahead and invest in a lot of capacity, and I'll keep the capacity available so that the moment I have materials available, I will go ahead and do it. But then the cost of manufacturing that, because it's dependent on material availability, would be a lot more than what you actually could incur. Measure inventory turns. If you are seeing a lot of FG, finished goods, work in progress inventory, or raw material inventory, you can work with your finance manager to understand the inventory turns that are there. And if you're seeing that a lot of inventory is sitting idle because of which your inventory turns are poor, this is again an opportunity for investment in APS. Measure your on-time delivery. If you are at 90-95%, you're already at good on-time delivery, and unless you have penalties in place, this may not be a good metric. But if you are at 50, 60, 70% on-time delivery, especially if you're an engineer-to-order company or a make-to-order company, then that would classify as poor on-time delivery, and that would be a good opportunity for advanced planning and scheduling. Measure your inventory capital cost or inventory carrying cost. So if you see a lot of poor inventory turns and inventory carrying costs are related. But it also depends, right? If it's your own place, you don't necessarily have an inventory carrying cost, or if it is a rented place, and if you have a very high inventory carrying cost, and which location you are, that also is going to matter. Like if you are in a remote tier 2, tier 3 city, maybe it doesn't matter a lot. But if you're closer to the city, or within the city where your manufacturing is, then inventory carrying cost could be very high, and that could also be an opportunity for advanced planning and scheduling. And lastly, how do we basically understand return versus investment for advanced planning and scheduling? So investment in planning and scheduling is a high investment and a high returns decision. Think of this category as, you are bringing in an enterprise solution. It's not something that you can just go and buy it with your credit card on Google, etc., and you can get up and running tomorrow. Whatever business model you choose, whether it is capital expenditure, where you buy perpetual licenses, or whether it's operational expenditures where you buy subscriptions, doesn't matter. The investment is high. And for investment, you should also be considering the cost of internal resources, skill availability. Do you have people who understand, at least one or two people who understand both manufacturing and how softwares have to be implemented in a manufacturing organization? If this skill availability is not there, if you're just going to ask production people to give requirements and to configure the software, that's a big risk unless they have some background. IT infrastructure, like looking at the right servers, the right computers, all this needs to be accounted in terms of your investment cost, because there is a lot of mathematics and computation going on right now in advanced planning and scheduling. So you assume that it will give me the results in minutes, etc. So you need basically the right IT infrastructure. Ask my apologies. Ask internally that once, if you bring in advanced planning and scheduling, do you have the willingness to change your internal processes to adopt new ways of working? And what I mean by this is that, let me give a very simple example. Let's say planning and scheduling tells you that your safety stock numbers that you have plugged into your ERP are not correct. They are leading to too much high inventory. You don't need that. You need to revise those numbers. Are you willing to go ahead and take up that massive activity? Let us say scheduling shows you that your cycle times are wrong. It can easily do that because it is so visual in nature. Are you ready to basically go ahead and make those changes? Today, sales is assuming when it wants basically 100 units, it's asking production for 120. And when production can produce 100, production is going and saying that we can only manufacture 80. Now, with advanced planning, planning and scheduling tools, you don't need to do this anymore. But even after having the software, if you're going to continue to have the same processes in place, have the same behaviors in place, then you may have implemented a great software, but is the end outcome coming on your financial books? The answer would probably be no. So this is the willingness that should be across the board. Where are you willing to change your internal processes? Will only production use the output from advanced planning and scheduling? And what I mean by this is the name. The moment we talk about planning and scheduling, it has mostly its relation basically with just production planning and control teams, but it is not so. Advanced planning and scheduling has impact on cross-functional teams, primarily sales, purchase, production, planning, okay, and strategic planning, which is nothing but your C-level management. So it impacts everybody. So is everybody going to use the outputs? Is everybody going to be dependent, or is it only going to be the production teams primarily? This is a very important question to answer internally in order to justify investments. And if you are looking only at reducing your planning time, this is a non-starter. Advanced planning and scheduling is never going to give you any payback or justify any investments. If you're saying that I'm taking 8 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours to do planning, and I want to reduce it, into a couple of minutes, or just do it within 1 or 2 hours. If that's what you're looking at as an outcome of advanced planning and scheduling, chances are that it will never make the justification of the investment that you're planning. What I can say is that any payback period, if you look at all the parameters that I shown you, over the last 23 years of advanced planning and scheduling, the software that we've been implementing from Siemens, known as Op Center Planning and Scheduling, it's been around for more than 23 years now. We have seen that across companies, the payback period basically has been less than a year. And what I mean by less than a year is that you take anywhere from 6 to 8 months to get the software running. The returns are actually in few days or few weeks. But if I combine the whole time, depending on your internal challenges, etc., the payback is usually less than a year. If you have larger cultural challenges, sure, the payback is basically going to be more, but still it's going to be within the standard payback, where if you're buying a machine, typically you're looking at a payback of less than 3 years. So any capital expenditures is looked at from the glass of less than 3 years, but here the return on investment for these strategic tools is always less than a year. All right, so two quick use cases. What's happening, what some of our customers are doing. So because of the current crisis, for many of our customers who are in batch and process manufacturing, there has been a spike in demand. So delivery is a challenge, and capacity optimization is a challenge. So the way they have been able to quickly use advanced planning and scheduling, as well as some of the intellectual property that we have built on advanced planning and scheduling systems available from Siemens. The outcomes have typically been faster sequencing, very accurate scheduling, but very high on-time delivery, even in a crisis mode. The second area is a discrete and a batch manufacturer, where we are looking at a packaging manufacturer where the situation is exactly the opposite. Demand has become uncertain because of the situation. They are struggling with inventory levels, and they have an additional problem of absenteeism. People are not able to make it from their home to the manufacturing plants, and whoever is able to take the risk and go. There's only certain amount of resources, workforce that is available. So the outcome of using planning and scheduling here is that they've been able to identify opportunities of cost reduction, primarily in the inventory areas. But more importantly, they've also been able to review some capital investments accurately. Packaging is a very high capital investment because it's very high speed, it's high volume. You need to plan your capital investments accurately and months in advance. They've been able to review all the capital investments that have been required very accurately. But over and above, in the poor demand, they've started manufacturing only what they need, and not just unnecessary going and building inventory levels. And this is where advanced planning and scheduling is helping both type of manufacturers, whether you have a surge in demand or whether you have demand uncertainty right now. So with this, I'd like to conclude and open up the floor for a few questions. And what I would definitely encourage all of you as next steps is that you can always get in touch with Rehan, our sales executive, and just do a discovery call and understand and give your requirements of the challenges that you're facing, and see whether advanced planning and scheduling can really help in your current situations, etc. The other thing I can suggest is that even if you feel that this is something that is going to be needed in the near future, most of us are working from home. Most of us have the time across cross functions, and this may be a good time to evaluate such technologies that are available, so that when the time is right, you can do consensus building now, keep it ready, so that when demand strikes back for you, if that's a very big concern, you have all the evaluations out of your way to get just going and start putting this into use. This is what my suggestions would be. Over to you, Rehan. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to me and for being a part of this webinar. And let's have some questions.
Thanks, Nikhil. Thank you for the very informative webinar. So we have one question. I think it's how do we calculate the ROI on the planning tool? I think you've answered
So
that in a bit, but I think it's more specific to what.
So if I understand the question correctly, you're specifically talking of planning, and just to let all our participants know, planning and scheduling are different. So planning is long term, it's rough cut, it's high level, and scheduling is more short term, day to day sequencing optimization. So the ROI for planning is usually is around inventory specifically, and strategic decisions of capital expenditures. When you're looking at multiple plants or even at a plant at a high level, you don't define planning capacities by each and every equipment. You just say that I produce 10 different types of SKUs, and at a high level, I can do 10,000 units a month. So when you're doing such high level planning, the return of investment in planning tools is justified only when you are looking at poor inventory turns, a lot of finished goods inventory, not necessarily work in progress. But if you're seeing a lot of raw material or finished goods inventory, that is where planning will help in providing an ROI. And the other thing that I can think of is the strategic decision making of capex. That may not really apply currently because in the current crisis, almost whether you like it or not, everything is just being put on hold. But yeah, these are the two opportunities, and I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, we can dwell on it more on a separate call. One more thing, one more question, Nikhil, here is that most of the manufacturers have ERPs with production planning modules. How do we justify a separate APS system, for internally as part of because ERPs also project out that they can do planning and scheduling as well. How do we justify an external system?
So the thing is that that's a good question, Ryan. Actually, production planning in ERPs, right? They have limited scheduling functionalities. They are more for creating an order, like planned orders, production orders, or the features that they have is more for material requirement, like what do I go and order. But the assumption is that you have infinite capacity in your manufacturing plant, which is never the case. You're always working only with limited amount of equipments. But the larger issue that we are seeing, what many of our customers who already have ERPs and they are using advanced planning and scheduling as an add-on or as an extension to their ERP, is that we've heard that if you see, ERP companies are designed to support the finance function, and they're not necessarily designed to run manufacturing operations. So if I want to do multiple what ifs, or if I want to basically make changes, it's much more difficult, much more costly to do it in my ERP, rather than doing it on a tool like advanced planning and scheduling, which provides you that function flexibility. And because it is able to integrate with the ERP solutions, you're still using the best of both worlds. You're using the best of your ERP and the best of advanced planning and scheduling. I hope that answers the participant's question.
Okay, okay. Then there's a final question. So some engineer to order industries use project management tools as part of their production planning and scheduling. Of course, because they have longer project timelines and they're mostly engineered to order. So how does an AS help in that scenario? Like for example, some people use Primavera from Oracle or MS Project.
Yeah.
So how does an APS solve that?
Yeah. So in project environments, right, all the planning and scheduling is activity based, right? It is not equipment based. So you're starting and you're scheduling basically your activities, and it's a different philosophy and approach, that I will list down all my activities and then I will allocate basically my resources to it. And the understanding there is that resources are not a constraint. That means, let's say if I am coming up with a construction site, and if the If the customer is telling me that, hey, do this entire construction project in 1 year instead of 3 years. So there would be activities, which really you need to crash the time. So the assumption in doing activity-based scheduling using MS Project, using Primavera or any other project management tools, is that if I want to go ahead and just get, instead of one crane, 5 cranes, for a specific time, I will just go ahead and do that, and the customer is willing to pay for it. And with that assumption, if you go, they are very good tools basically for EPC kind of channel. But what we are seeing is that when that works basically in a high demand scenario, if you had, like, 20 projects going on and you want to crash most of them, and you can, utilize your resources, you have that much amount of capital investment. But if you look at it in a time of demand certainty, that's not a very good philosophy to take on, because the assumption is that if I need more resources, I will just get them. Advanced planning and scheduling goes basically more in an optimized fashion to say that we will work with your constraints, and let's take those constraints and do more, or do the maximum with whatever we have. And then if we need, we will go and get additional stuff consciously. And that's the primary difference of using an APS versus using project management tools.
All right. All right, thanks, Nikhil. So I think those are all the questions for today. Thank you for your time, everybody. And if you have any other questions, you can email them to me, or if you have any other queries, we can take it offline and answer them. So again, thanks everybody, and probably we can meet up on another webinar that might be coming up next month. And thank you, Mr. Nikhil, for your time and your expertise on today's webinar.
All right. Thanks, Rehan. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.